Okay, tonight I thought I'd be talking a little bit about what we can call the core teachings of the Buddha, which you already know about. But anyway, the Four Noble Truths. Of course, I thought I would be covering the Four Noble Truths in one session. The previous session I just got one, but we're not in a hurry, as we all know. But there are a few points which might be of interest, especially for our own practices. So, as we all know, the Four Noble Truths are rightly considered the core teachings of the Buddha. And they are, taken as really the nuts and bolts of the teachings of the Buddha by very different Buddhist schools, Tibetans, Chinese or Indians or Burmese. They all agree that the Four Noble Truths are really it. And that's true. By the way, that's true. So we know, for example, that the Buddha preached the Four Noble Truths during his first sermon and right after his own enlightenment. So actually he was expounding on what had been his own experience, He was telling us like, this is what I've found out, This has been my own experience, And as you know, the Four Noble Truths are, I will use some difficult words, but I will try and explain them. The first Noble Truth is the truth of dukkha. Usually translated as suffering, but it's not really true or correct. Now imagine this. Because then, say, First Noble Truth, the Buddha was preaching that everything is suffering, and it becomes immediately not very appealing to most people. It's quite dark stuff, Why would anybody be interested in something so depressing? Well, actually, dukkha is a very wide-ranging sort of a term. Now imagine this, like in our everyday lives, there is always a sort of a gap between the way things are and how we would like them to be. There is always a little bit of a slight or very big difference amongst those two things. That gap is what is called dukkha. So it could be, for example, feeling slightly uncomfortable when you're sitting on your favorite armchair watching your TV. And after a while you say, better move a little bit. That's dukkha, according to the Buddha. Up to having some horrible physical condition with pain or psychological suffering. So there is a wide range of experiences which you can rightly put under the dukkha umbrella, let's call it like that. So the First Noble Truth. Life is basically this gap between things as they are and how we would like them to be. Second Noble Truth, it's there is a reason for this suffering, and the Buddha called this tanha. It's roughly translated as desire usually, but it's not really desire. It's more like craving for something. The original Sanskrit word is very similar to the English word thirst. So we feel like we have to drink something because we are thirsty. And it's a never-ending thirst. So we never really get over it, actually, So, craving, thirst. But it's not really desire. In Buddhism, we see that desire is not seen as something horrible or anything like that. There are very good desires to have, the desire to get enlightened. Yes. Those are kusala desires. And there are other sorts of desire which are not so desirable. To make a play on words. And but desire in itself is not something horrible or not at all. So craving gives us something which is closer to what was actually meant. Then the third noble truth is the good news. It's possible to get over this and reach a state of unconditional peace, which is called Nibbana or Nirvana in Sanskrit. Good news. That's good news. Well done. You reach Nibbana through the extinguishing of craving, which is the cause for dukkha. It's not so complicated. It's quite simple. And fantastic. How do we do that? That's the fourth noble truth. The noble eightfold path. The stuff we are doing here all day long, basically that's it. So it's not something so complicated to understand, also from an intellectual point of view. Well, to put it into practice, that's another thing altogether. But it's simple. Not easy, but doable. You can do it. That was the message of the Buddha. This is what I have realized. I have done this, you can do this too. That's why I'm spending all my life preaching. The good news. If you weren't able to do it, I wouldn't be wasting my time preaching to you. I'd be sitting under a tree, enjoying my enlightenment. Why would I bother? So that's the good news. So, to see these things a bit more. Now, let's get a bit more specific about this truth of suffering, dukkha. We could distinguish, I guess, three broad groups of suffering. First of all, we have physical suffering. I think we all agree on that. Second group, we could call it psychological suffering. And the third group is like existential suffering. Oh, all these things that I'm telling you, they are, printed. The Buddha actually told them in the first sermon, so I'm not making these things up. So let's have a look at the first kind of suffering, that physical suffering. Now, during the sermon, the Buddha was expounding on the first noble truth. So he says this is the noble truth of suffering. He says, 1, birth is suffering. 2, aging or old age is suffering. 3, illness is suffering. 4, death is suffering. I think we all agree on all of them. Birth is suffering. I don't remember, but my mother does. And even for me, I don't think it was such a fun experience. Coming out of the womb, I don't think so. Getting old, it sucks. It's not nice. No. Not being able to do the things we used to do, not so nice. We don't like it, of course. Aches and pains, and it's a pity. It's damn. Illness, of course. Being ill is not nice, especially if you lots of suffering, and nothing works. Not a nice way to be. And of course, dear old death. We're not so keen on that usually. It's not something that we welcome with open arms. Unless, the physical or psychological suffering is so great that you just say, I've had enough. It's whatever, but enough of this, It happens quite often, by the way. So, these kinds of suffering, which we are calling physical sufferings, can actually become a springboard for psychological suffering. Of course, I'm getting old, aches and pains, that doesn't make me so happy. That's psychological suffering, okay? Illnesses and all that sort of stuff. But besides that, the Buddha gave us 3 types that we could be calling psychological suffering. First of all, union with what is displeasing is suffering. Imagine you have to spend your time during a long travel with somebody who talks and talks and talks about nonsense, and you cannot leave. That is suffering. That is psychological suffering, actually. Or the other way around. Sooner or later, we will all face, maybe we've already faced it, the reality of having what is dear to us taken away from us, like people we've loved ones, parents, children maybe, friends. The older we get, the lonelier we become. People are dropping like flies, left and right. Fast. I do remember in this hall a few people who are not here anymore. There, empty spaces, Empty spaces. Not only in the hall, but our own hearts. Gone forever. Just memories. I'm getting very dark. Better move on. 2. Not to get what one wants is dukkha. Things, or, for example, fame, being acknowledged, being rich, being recognized, or very simply not being able to get a new car. Or get a hip replacement if you need one. That sucks. 3. This is the most difficult one. I will try my best. The 5 aggregates subject to clinging. The khandhas. This is quite subtle, very deep. This is the most difficult aspect of dukkha to understand. Because usually we take ourselves to be this form. Who are you? Well, it's me, you know. I am me, right? No. Because that me is made up of 5 things according to the Buddha. Imagine having a cake. A cake is made of usually eggs, flour, sugar, butter. But if you haven't cooked it, or you don't know anything about how to make cakes, you see a cake and you say, oh, that's a cake. No. A cake is made up of very many different things. And we are the same. We are made up of 1. What is called a bodily form, or material image or an impression. Anyway, rupa is the name. What we usually see as my body. This physical, touchable thing, you know, your physical presence. 2, this is a bit more difficult. Vedana. Difficult to translate. Feelings, sensations. Let's be very clear. Vedana has got nothing to do with emotions. Vedana is not an emotion. Or, as you say in English, a feeling. Feeling, nothing more than feelings. Anyway, I digress. That's not Vedana. Vedana is very simple. Basic, primal, we could say, you know. It's like, how can we say? Pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Full stop. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay? It's really primal. Before it becomes emotions or things that I like. No, it's very, very, very basic. You know? So, number 1, rupa. Physical, materials. 2, vedana. Like it, don't like it, I don't know. Okay? Very simple. Number 3, sanya, perceptions. Now, perceptions. They are not really like perceptions as you use them in English. It's not like just perceiving something, but it's more like giving it a name, recognizing something. So it's just not, I have a perception. No, it's like, I have a perception, I mean there is a contact, it rises a feeling, blah blah, it's a bit complicated, it's in the cycle of condition, we are not getting into that. Anyway, but it's, let's keep this in mind. We give things or experiences a name, okay? That's what is meant as a perception. Okay? And it's really important to understand this because through perceptions we create the world. Through the way we perceive things, we create a reality. And we all know that our own perceptions change very fast for the same object. During the day, for example, depending on our moods and other stuff, you know. But the object is exactly the same. That's one of the things which is so fantastic about a retreat. Everything around us stays exactly the same. Timetable, those boring Dhamma talks that I've heard a million times. Jesus Christ, now the Dhamma talk about dukkha, please. Anything but that. Ha! You're seeing dukkha. That's why we do it. I mean, what can you talk about after a while? But the way we go through the day changes from one day to another day, from one sitting to another sitting. But nothing much outside changes. Everything stays the same, So that maybe suggests that it's not the outside which is so important, but it's the inside which actually creates either a pleasant or an unpleasant experience. Or an I don't know experience, anyway. That's food for thought. Then we have, in response to our perceptions, there will arise some kind of volitional activity, samkara, an act of will. You will do something, okay? Based upon a perception, we decide, no, enough soup, thanks. I want more pasta, okay? That's a volitional activity. Really simple, nothing special. Samkara, that's it. That's a mental formation, if you like it better, okay? And we produce those all the time. One after the other, okay? That's actually what we are watching during the practice. You're just basically watching that. If you're watching the mind, that's what you're watching. And they arise, and they disappear. They arise, and they disappear. They arise, and they disappear. Very fast. So fast. You can't follow them. You can't control them. You can't do anything about them. You just stay there watching this very strange show. And it's even stranger because sometimes you actually believe those things to be true and to be you. Wrong. They're not you. Of course. Just samskara. Of course. And then, last but not least, have you ever heard about something called consciousness? That's it. Consciousness. Citta. It's basic awareness of things. Consciousness. So, we are actually made up of these 5 things, which, imagine that, they are changing all the time. And they interact with each other and with lots of other things, inside, outside. Is that a problem? In itself, it is not a problem. It becomes a problem if you take that as the basis for your self. So we are trying to build a solid self out of something which is not solid at all, but it's changing all the time. To put it in another way, we are trying to seek refuge in something which is not safe, because it is changing all the time. How can that be safe? So it's a failed project from the beginning, from the get-go. I mean, it can't work. But we are so ignorant, so confused. We actually believe that to be possible. And we spend our lives, life after life, after life, after life, chasing that nonsense. Until we see the light. Not worthwhile. There is something better, which is the, come on, you know that. Come on, come on. The only thing which is worthwhile pursuing. Just one. Wow, fantastic, great, well done. That's it. I knew you'd get it. Which is called the unconditioned. If all other things are conditioned, and since they are conditioned, they are not so, quite frankly, desirable, and they can't be a safe place to rest. Well, if there is something which is called the unconditioned, that's the only thing which is worthwhile, pursuing as something to be a foundation for unconditional peace. All the other stuff is bound to fall away sooner or later. That's the truth of it, the reality of it. So, it's a very worthwhile project to, pursue liberation from suffering. And or, call it like you wish, nibbana, or the unconditioned. It's the only thing worthwhile doing. Because all the other things, quite frankly, are sure to fail, sooner or later. But of course, we do what we can, right? We are very ignorant, we are not arahants yet. But through the practice, you see deeper and deeper and deeper in the real nature of things, the way things really are. How are they? They are impermanent, anicca. They are not so satisfying, dukkha. And they are not yours, anatta. Or you can't freaking control them, There's no way. We would really love to, I'm gonna put things right. Yeah, right. Sure. Good luck. Things have got this very nasty habit of, first of all, they do not listen to us. They do what they want. You rearrange things nicely. In a matter of seconds, they have rearranged themselves, by themselves, how they want. Very disappointing. What a waste of energy, by the way. So that's the way things are. But, as we all know, there is hope. Because the Buddha said that things do not have to be necessarily this way. It is possible to gain liberation from suffering by letting go of the cause of suffering, which is craving, this never-ending running after basically unreliable experiences or things. If what we are looking for is actually unconditioned peace, because all other phenomena are conditioned, so they will not be able to give us what we are actually looking for. So it's quite simple in a way. It's not so complicated. So that's the way it goes. So we have this physical suffering, psychological suffering, and this existential suffering, which is clinging to the 5 khandhas, to the 5 aggregates. Those are those 3 levels. And this last one is the subtlest, the most difficult to see and to let go, of course. I am my body. I am my feelings, of course. my emotional life. I have to set it straight, Get it in order once and for all. I've had enough of this nonsense. Let's find a cure. The cure. Once and for all, please. I've had enough of these nasty things bugging me. There must be a reason. Of course, it must be in the past. Once we discover that, all plain sailing from there. Yes, of course. Maybe not. Because things change all the time. I mean, it's the experiencer now is not the one who was 10 years old a long time ago. No, sorry. The experiencing is different moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. So why in the practice we usually say it's this. Be with what is right now and look at it. How does it work? Is it always the same? No. Is it so nice? No. Is it really yours? No. So why do you bother so much with it? Wake up. Turn towards something else. Which of course we will not understand by thinking. But it's an experiencing. Not an experience, but experiencing all the time, all the time, all the time. So, just to end on a positive note, it's freedom is possible. Freedom from suffering is possible. That's the good news. The Buddha said, I have done it. You can do it too. Wow. Let's go. How do we do that? You follow the Noble Eightfold Path. Bhavana, or translated as meditation, but it's not very correct, is part of the Noble Eightfold Path, but it's not all of it. Sila and all the other stuff. So, but actually, by following the Noble Eightfold Path, it is possible to gain freedom from suffering by getting rid of the cause of suffering, which is craving, which we have seen being not really desire, but this unquenchable thirst for always something else, always something else, always something, new experiences, something. Please give me something, anything, but just give me something. Because otherwise, who am I? That's the idea, But we will see, I think tomorrow we will go through the second noble truth, the third and the fourth in a bit more detail. For now we've seen, I think it's really important. What do we actually mean by dukkha, suffering? So it's quite a wide-ranging sort of experience. It can be very insignificant in a way to something really big and unbearable. But it's dukkha anyway, right? Something which is not so satisfying after all. So, as I was telling the class before, I never ask whether there are any questions because I forget to ask whether you have any questions, but I promise I will try and remember in the next few days whether there are actually questions about the things we've been talking about and stuff like that. Okay? So we have quite a few minutes if you want to go for a small walk before the practice of metta. So thanks for your presence and listening heart. Thanks a lot.